to Make That Paper, the show where we talk about all the crazy jobs we do to make the cash we need to pursue our artistic dreams.
And for a modestly priced bottle of scotch to accompany your Make That Paper podcast binge party.
Yes, on this episode, we'll be having a conversation about a myriad of vehicular vocations, the producing pretty pictures project, and the old dirty DVD description day job. We are your hosts, Jamie Parker Stickle
and Jason Bieber.
And on this episode, we are speaking to an incredibly talented and dynamic writer who has written feature films, co-authored the top-selling fantasy comic book series, The Source, and the hit YA graphic novel, Unikorn.
He's a story architect for the video game industry, which I think might be the coolest job title I've ever heard.
Yes.
And he's a professor of screenwriting at the University of California, Riverside.
We are so excited to have him here and talk to him about everything he does for a living, but didn't want to do for a career. It's the one and only Joshua Malkin.
Yes.
We're so excited. Look at him. He's so scared. Don't worry. We're not that bad.
It's going to be fine. You're going to be great.
Through me, Jamie. It's amazing.
Mr. Malkin, before you were, or maybe while you were starting to get in the zone of being able to write and direct and produce and make things happen for a living, you were doing other stuff for a living, and you sent us a few interesting tidbits that maybe we should just dive right into.
I want to dive right into one right away, because I'm super curious if this is even a current job one can have. You were a runner, and I understand runners to be people who are taking scripts and running them around town and delivering them to people.
That is correct. I was a runner of yet another evaporating format. I was a film runner. I literally ran between the set and the lab with film to be processed from set. Most of it motion picture film, but some cases still film. It was still being processed in labs. So these are, large format cameras, and these labs would stay open 24 hours a day.
Oh my God.
Runners would basically just feed them material around the clock in 10-hour shifts. It's an extraordinarily satisfying job, as I'm sure you know.
I was a runner for a day, no, more than a day, but a very short period of time, but for somebody who worked in the porn industry. So my job included personal assistant, runner. I didn't know sometimes, they would give me the owner's BMW to drive so that I wouldn't have to put miles on my shitty, clunky, old Ford Focus. And they were like, no, you have to show up in a nice car. And I was like, okay, but is it drugs? What am I running right now? I was terrified at times.
I mean, I will say that was both my least and most favorite part of being a runner, was being the publicly noticed person who gets to leave the island, and is the island regularly, because I'd have a list at all times with okay, well, Pete and Teamsters wants a pack of Marlboros, and wardrobe inexplicably wants a pack of condoms.
So you preempted Postmates.
I was Postmates, and I was Postmates in a pre-app era in which there was no mechanism to get paid back.
That's
I
amazing.
Think
some civilian saw Joshua doing a run for a production, thinking I could use a Joshua in my life.
Absolutely. Yet another sphere of pre-employment that I did not manage to monetize or turn into a cottage industry.
Did anybody ever tip you? If you were picking up cigarettes and, non-film essential needs, were you tipped?
No, I was never,
damn it, Postmates.
I was never tipped, but there is I'm sure you guys know this, there's an informal system of favors that sort of exists on most sets. So most of the tips that I considered having earned were not being reported when I fell asleep in my car, which was we all have our shitty employee habit, and that was mine, was
Mine too. I used to leave the office to go sleep in my car for 20 minutes. It turned into 45
oh yeah,
every afternoon at 2.
yeah, no, I would just, put on the walkie, and be like, I'm ready for a run, and go to my car and just assume that it would wake me, and not all the time would it. And so, another PA would have to come rouse you. And as long as you had done the appropriate amount of cigarette fetching and ding dong purchasing, there really weren't that many repercussions for unscheduled round the clock naps. So
Well, do you think they also knew like they're paying you shitty and it's basic like, oh, these kids, like they're not in,
no. No,
no,
there was not
accumulated.
not a huge recognition of the crappy pay. Like that was the the unfortunate part of being a runner, is this sort of cemented, unwritten understanding that somehow I'm lucky to have this job.
Yeah.
The baseline understanding that you're going to be paid garbage.
Yeah, it's like, but like you're happy to be garbage, and ultimately,
you're in it.
There's 30 people behind you willing to get
Exactly.
even more garbage than you. Do you want us to tap one of those people on the shoulder? And the answer was always no.
No, and they do hold that over your head, and also you get. Tell me if I'm wrong, but I always felt like in certain jobs where I was parallel to the thing I wanted, so I got comfortable because I didn't have to start something new. But I was like, I'm touching the thing I want, even though I'm not actually doing the thing I want. I'm close enough at this point where I feel satisfied.
Totally.
And that's a sucky place to be, because then you've got to finally grow a pair and go, I'm out of here.
That is true. That is true. And ultimately it's what those who manage sets don't want, right? They don't want people like me to look at the ladder. They want me to like get really good at my really small, unique single step on the ladder and stay there forever.
Right.
And no. So,
how did you get that job? Were you in college?
No, honestly, I got it while I was still in film school. I went to AFI, and really wanted a part of my experience in Los Angeles to be working on set for all the reasons that you just mentioned. Like I wanted the mechanics of like movie magic to be highly visible at all. Like otherwise why live here? And it did sort of become a treadmill in that way, because there is an implied permeability between like the different spheres of crew, but it's not really real. Like that sense that like, like, oh, I'm really interested in the camera department. And like, there is a pathway here from runner to camera assistant. Not really.
Yeah. I mean, anything's possible.
Not direct.
Listen,
not a direct one.
If you're cute enough, anything's possible.
And therein lies the problem, Jamie. So the cute ascension up the ladder was not in the cards for me. It was going to be a skill set driven ascension up the ladder. So I
picture young Joshua very cute in film school, and people going,
I'm so appreciative of that credit. I had really long hair, really long greasy hair. Like I really looked the all black all the time. Like I if there was a wardrobe for art school flunky turned PA, like I invented it.
It sounds like you knew where to get good weed.
I knew exactly where to get good weed, and none of those places were at the time. Yeah, no, they certainly didn't bring it to the house.
Now, speaking of, well, not speaking of, but runner, I mean, it's kind of a misnomer because you were driving. And something I find delightful is you made mention of the fact that you were not a good driver. Did that ever become a problem?
Oh yeah, it was a frequent problem. Yeah, I mean, a lot of this, I mean, I think not that running is a big job anymore because there are no film to run, but I so wish that like I had had an iPhone and geo navigation, because at the time it was like literally like an open Thomas guide on my lap and like splintered the tension between the road and like, oh shit, I got to turn to G4. And, you know, I got into, over the course of the 10 years in which I was driving as part of my job for whatever, I probably got into an annual accident. There was like one, like, oh crap, this is the reason I'm not going to be driving anymore. It never turned out to be it, but and they were always, no one was ever hurt.
Someone else's fault every time.
Oh, always my fault.
Oh, really?
Every single one of them my fault.
So when you're driving for the studio, you're like, and you're having annual accidents, whose insurance does that affect? I think the studio covers you because you're on the job, right?
It should. It should. And this is where, I mean, a lot has probably changed in the realm of PAing and PAdom. But when I was doing an awful lot of this work, I was, as I already mentioned, young, like 23, 24, and terrified of doing bad, not being invited back, developing a bad reputation. And
it's like we're the same person. It like
fascinating.
It haunts me to this day how much PTSD I have that I created in myself. I feel like at times, right?
A ton. And you know, it's an environment that just by engineering can really kind of destroy a people pleaser. Like, and
yes.
I was one.
After fielding them for the work, because they're
yeah, for real. Like, we need people pleasers. We love people pleasers.
Yeah.
Crush them. But in most of the instances in which I got accidents, the option was to file on the company insurance, but I elected to take it on my personal insurance, or at the time my parents' insurance, because I was so afraid of what the ramifications of an accident. And, you know, in a couple of instances, the threat wasn't just implicit, it was outright. Like, are you sure you want to like go to the UPM and tell them that you backed into
you let somebody know, you let your supervisor know, hey, I had an accident, I need to file a claim. And your supervisor, whose name we won't say here.
Of course not. No, all names are obscured to protect the non-innocent. But yeah, there's no hiding it. Like, if you smash a window on a pass van, there's no like, well, I hope nobody notices. They will notice. And part of being a people pleaser also means being perniciously honest. And so like, I self-reported everything. But yeah, it was an environment in which taking care of your own mistakes was highly encouraged.
I'm curious, how long did you do that for? How long?
Running specifically?
Yeah.
Not super long. I mean, it was one of a number of sort of shitty set related jobs that I juggled for a while.
Yeah.
And running.
I see that you were also a PA. You were also doing deliveries.
And I ultimately moved up that ladder. So that was the track that I pursued at the beginning of the hustle. There was this wedge. It was shitty office job. Am I going to do a shitty office job, or am I going to string together enough shitty set work that I can keep that as an engine going year round? And that was the big question for me, because an awful lot of production at the time, and I didn't know much about it, seemed grotesquely seasonal. Like, okay, we're doing all the television pilots right now, we're doing all the commercials right now, and then there was like this blank spot from like November through February that I didn't yet know how to survive. I'm like, I thought it was great that other people were getting paid enough to like work 7 months out of the year, and then the PAs didn't make enough to like take 4 to 5 months off. So how was I going to bridge that gap? And so it made PAing as a sustainable reality seem unlikely. So it was like, okay, I got to climb that ladder, or I can get a shitty desk job. And so I experimented with both. So I came and left like for 7 years, I came and left a handful of desk jobs, and I came and left a handful of essentially freelance production jobs that involve, all of which that involve driving, despite my shitty driving record.
Dude, I remember when I had my first audition. It was like 3 weeks after I landed here, and I had my Thomas guide, and it was so effed up, and I had to go find this little office on La Cienega. And the shitty thing about La Cienega is like you hit a certain road and it changes numbers, and it changes not just numbers, but it's like the odds are now on the other side.
Oh yeah, no,
and like I kept calling the agent because I was late, and she was just yelling at me, and I'm like, but I don't understand. Is there a crossroad? And she's like, I don't know. Look at your Thomas guide. I was staring at the Thomas guide. I had no idea.
Yeah, no, agreed. No, it's third. And like, as somebody new to LA, like just constantly being told like these wholly unreasonable missions, like it's like, okay, hi, we're in Santa Monica and we need you to get to Burbank in 15 minutes. And like not knowing like, oh, that's absurd and unreasonable and never going to happen, even if everybody was dead. Like I didn't know. I'd just be like, okay, sure, I'll figure out a way to get to Burbank in 15 minutes. That you wouldn't ask it if that wasn't possible.
Exactly.
And realizing, no, I was never being told possible.
That's not possible.
I was never being given realistic parameters. I was always being given an accidental anxiety attack.
Right. And let's be honest, you get there and there's nowhere to park because everything says no PA parking, no actor parking, no audition parking. And so then you have to add another half hour onto your anxiety.
Oh, the most common, because this is all labs in the middle of the night, you know, is that like, you know, you'd get someplace at 3 a.m. and it's a fortress. And it's like literally like you have no cell phones because before that you have 15 minutes to like get it to a person who's inside that building, but it's a locked gate. There's no like so the number of fences that I climbed in my desperate attempt to like get a can of film to the to the door.
That's amazing.
It's absurd.
That's amazing. And I want to say this. So I had a cell phone, but I recognized that so many people over the age of 50 who were like entrenched that you were responsible to did not have cell phones. So you were like, I can't communicate unless it's a young person, and it's not a young person, it's a person without, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I had a pager, which is like another stress magnifier. Because all you can do is get pages that like 911, where are you? Where are you? Get here quickly. And you're like, I have no way of responding to this.
or you add to like the stress level you're already feeling of navigating all this to this additional task of keeping one eye on the side of the road for a payphone.
Absolutely.
So after driving got to be too much for you and you moved on and just life got better. And then you moved into freelance. All right. You were working freelance. What are you trying to say? You were working freelance. Well, I'm trying to understand. What this job is. You were an advertising photo producer.
Yeah. What is that? What does that mean?
What is that?
All right. So I'm gonna because that's what this ended up being a really cool job, really long-standing one.
Great.
But not in any way what I wanted to do. So while I was PAing and doing all this running job, I was starting to meet a lot of really high profile commercial still photographers, predominantly that did people in automotive, and just realizing that as a world, I preferred it. They didn't offer any of the stuff that I thought I wanted from being on set. Like there was none of that, like, oh, I'm going to see a celebrity, or, oh, I'm going to, but there were fewer people, which meant fewer dramas. The hours were far less absurd. And the jobs had like a scope and a trajectory, and they didn't move very fast. Like, you know, I had gone from a world in which we were shooting, you know, television shows or low budget features or whatever, and, 18-hour days and 27 setups to like a guy whose job was like, I'm going to take 3 pictures today, like 3 still pictures
Amazing.
today. And like the what I thought the rhythm was so different. It was so different, so much more relaxed. And it offered something that I had never really had the opportunity to do much as a kid, which was travel. The jobs were all over the world. And so
Wow.
like
That's amazing.
as a young kind of PA to be like, we're going to Egypt, we're going to Switzerland, we're going to Italy, we're going to Jamaica, we're going to Japan, we went all over the place. And so those jobs, like over the first couple of years I was running and PAing, I kind of locked in on as the ones that I would move mountains to get, you know, the ones that I would compete for, the ones that I would prioritize, even if they weren't as long, which was always kind of scary as a young person to be like, I'll take that 4-day job until it's get to that 4-month job, because that's 4 days in Prague and I want to go to Prague.
Right.
But it was a world that just was really well suited to my skill set. And so I went from PA to producer essentially over the course of about a year. Like once I was kind of in that world, I kind of climbed up the ranks and became the go-to producer for 5 or 6 pretty top tier photographers who were bringing in millions of dollars a year each. And it was really great, except for the fact that I was now the first person on speed dial for all of these extraordinarily tightly wound fetishistic professional photographers who only worked 6 or 7 days out of the year, and all the rest of the year just needed insane shit. And like being the person that they went to like for their insane shit was less fun, but was also part of being the first person they'd call when they actually got a job. So
what kind of insane shit are we talking about?
I'm curious.
I wrote letters that got their kids into schools.
Oh my gosh.
I planned personal vacations. I sourced extraordinarily exotic and hard to find pet foods.
That's the one I'm looking for.
Yeah, you know, like, oh my God, Fifi, like we'll only eat this, and like they're all sold out in the country. We need it tomorrow. Can you do it? And it'd be like, yeah, probably. And I don't want to, but I know if I do, like I'm gonna get hero points, and you're bidding a big job for Sony. And so there was always that tension between knowing that doing favors for these people was a way of having uninvited oversight into what they were about to be working on. And so, yeah.
So what percent of that job, what percent of that job is outside of the job? Like,
80%.
80% of the job.
80% of the job is not working the job.
So here's my question. Who are you working for? Where's your salary coming from for the whole year? Are you working for an agency?
It's a different, there's so many different ways in which this can work. There are so many shell games, or at least were, that would get people like me paid. Sometimes if the photographer was a big enough deal for a particular client, they would get like an off-pitch overage, right? Like this is kind of our retainer to have you for the year. And so out of that fee would come the monies that they would pay people like me. They would pay the rent on their studio. They would pay, but they just had this discretionary pot of money that wasn't theirs to spend on this kind of stuff. Sometimes it was out of their own pocket. You know, there was an understanding that like almost everybody in my universe has a day rate. And, you know, and so their feeling was, as long as your day rate is getting paid, you're mine, and you do like
you write essays to get my kid into college.
Yeah. And so, you know, very often it would just be them paying me out of their pocket, which very rarely was literally out of their pocket. Very often it was them reappropriating money out of some budget and being like, okay, I have $1,500 in post-production today. I'll spend $500 of it on Malkin going Christmas shopping for me because I can't deal with them all. And
But you are getting paid.
but you're
this
getting
sounds
paid.
more
You're getting
like
paid.
my personal assistant job.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a lot of personal assistant. There's a lot of like getting into the mechanics of people's families that you'd really not want to. Like, I mean, all of these photographers were married and had kids, and like, you know, so like over the time of working with them, you know, over a decade, really, like you're growing up with you're watching their kids grow up, you're watching their marriages come together or fall apart, you're watching, you're involved in life to a degree that I never thought like was going to be a part of my professional life at all.
And this whole time, are you working on your own career as a screenwriter?
Yeah, this whole time, I mean, and again, I come back to that bifurcation between office job and whatever. While I was running, I was also temping. And so that was my other exposure to getting work in LA, was just showing up to random office buildings on every other Monday and being like, where's the filing cabinet?
Yeah, I temped with Apple One.
That was mine too.
Hey, we were all Apple One at some point.
All in one.
And you know, look, everybody has a different experience with temping. Like my experiencing with temping was super surreal. It was really weird in LA. Like I felt like everywhere I went, I was offered full-time employment and shackles. Like it was fascinating. Like I felt so underqualified and felt so like you can put a sentence together and you know the alphabet.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And you got here under your own power on time. Jesus Christ, let's figure out a way to get you in office. And
I ended up the same. I mean, I started as a temp and ended up running a fucking accounting firm.
Yeah.
A big accounting firm.
Yeah.
Like 100 people worked for me. I was like, what? I don't know anything about this.
I got offered office manager 4 different times on my 3rd temping day. I mean, like we have a career track position opening up right down the hall. Do you want it? Like, seriously, like, do I interview for it? It's like, no, you just say yes and you start tomorrow. And it's like, oh my God, this is so different than PAing, like where I feel that like every slot above me is being guarded. Like every slot above me is like, hey, can I move up? You know, go back to the back of the line. And like,
and those slots suck too.
But that was the thing.
Yeah.
Is that like in the temping universe, like the where I'm grateful / not grateful for PAing is it completely ruined and warped my relationship with money. Like, like, because very often I was getting paid in cash, very often I was pocketing per diem. And so it's kind of like being a server where there's just like this illusion of instant wealth because you have like lots of cash on you at any given time.
Right.
As opposed to getting my first couple Apple One paychecks where I was like, oh my God, like, how this is not going to work. Like, like, you know, it's $16 an hour and then they take their cut and then I paid for gas and then somehow I had to have dry cleaning done in there and to wear a pressed shirt and like it no longer made like got $80 for the day. And that's kept funneling me more and more towards the production side of the business where the illusion of a higher day rate was so seductive and the illusion of cash on hand was so seductive. And just
keeping your money.
Keeping your money. Yeah.
Keeping your money. Yeah. I mean, just the fact that you don't have to like there's no dress code.
Yeah. No, it was a huge deal. It was a huge deal that all my miles were reimbursable. Like I was literally.
Except when you stop working for Apple One, I'll say this, and you work employed for the company itself, you realize what a scam Apple One is and how much they're taking of your rate. Real? I mean, it was horrible to the point where after 2 months at one place, and I left because I had booked a job. I was hosting a show and then that ended up getting canceled. And I was like, crap, I've got to go back to temping. Like it was terrible. But nonetheless, the company I had temped for hired me full time and gave me the ability to go on auditions and work, you know, lunch hours and things like that. But I made so much more money that it felt worth it. Plus I got healthcare, so I didn't have to pay for the doctor anymore, and 401k match. And I was like, why wouldn't I do this? And all my actor friends and writer friends were like, because now you're not a writer. Now you're not an actor. And I was like, I've been poor for a long time. I'm hungry and I'm very skinny. So I'm going to eat, because there's nothing that feels good about being skinny except that clothes look really good on you.
That's true. And that is not to be knocked, no, it's the same. It was the same. I felt the, you know, you feel the drumbeat behind that door palpably, right? Like health insurance, 401k,
responsible choices. And if they're going to work with you in your career, like for me, it was either that or, you know, listen, at the time that I was doing it, it was, you can't get into a writer's room if you're an actor. Like these two worlds have to be separate. You can't tell people you're an actor and you're going to work 80 hours a week as a writing assistant in a room. And then when you get staffed, that's it. Like you are not an actor anymore. Whereas when I went to my job at Nestle, it was like, you're an actor. That's so great. You're a writer. That's so great. Let us support you. What do we need to do to get you where you're going to go? We don't want to lose you, but if we're going to lose you, we want to lose you to the thing that you want to do. So that kind of support is
they want to be able to say they knew you when.
They wanted to say, and there were so many people that came from there that were temps that were famous then. Like half the cast of Mad TV were temps at
oh, that's hysterical. I will say I was not so lucky in that regard. Like both of these were spheres in which I felt like I was very actively denying, at least to my employers, that I wanted to be a writer. You know, in the temp universe, like the second I said, like, that really, I just got out of film school and I've been a writer, was the moment that their willingness to sort of push me up the ladder died. You could see it in their face. It's like, oh, so you're going to be here a week. Never mind on you.
Well, I have a theory about that. And that is, if somebody says they want to be a writer and they see how hard you work at whatever they have you doing, they're like, oh, he's a hard worker. He wants to be a writer. He will be a writer. And so we're going to lose him. When someone comes in and says, I'm going to work really hard for you, but I want to be an actor, they're like, okay, but you're going to be here for a while.
Maybe so. And then on set, nobody wanted to hear, like, you know, like, I'm working on a screenplay. Like, who here isn't? Like there was no like diagnostic specialness of being like, yeah, but I'm really a director. Like, okay, join
a screenplay, really?
Of your very own that you've typed. Nobody cared.
Wait, do you have final draft?
So the answer was, yeah, I was working on my own stuff constantly and just trying to measure like what rubric allowed me to get more of it done. And the one that allowed me to get more of it done was the one in which I was freelancing, because it was a way for me to utilize my anxiety about not having a next job lined up in a fruitful way. Like I could be like, oh, I don't have a job for a week. I can write. It's all, I can turn that towards writing. And that actually turned out to be really helpful. What I did notice is for the
same person.
Very likely. Same person. For the very brief time I accepted an office job, like 11 months at a PR firm, I stopped writing during that almost entire window. And I had more opportunities to write, like on any given day. Like I came home at the exact same time. Like there was none of that unpredictability, but it wasn't anybody else saying like, oh, you got an office job, you're not a writer anymore. Something in my head broke. And I think I started telling that to myself in a weird way.
People suck when they do that. Artists don't live like that. You don't want to pay us anything for our work, and then you want to disqualify us when we find other means to support ourselves to allow us to be the artists we want to be.
Of course, it's hard.
Suck.
The world is not very kind, but what it also is part of it is just like being really honest about like what type of artist you are. And like, I just think for a long time, I just wasn't honest with myself. Like I wanted the way in which I worked to be convenient to my fiscal appetites. Like I wanted to be able to turn it off and on. I wanted to be able to write when I had time, not necessarily when I had 7 straight days off. But the reality is like that I couldn't command the muses to sing. I couldn't change some of my bad writing habits. And part of being in an office every day was distancing myself from some of the hungers that like kept writing really vital for me.
Yeah.
And and part of that was because I was getting paid a little bit better, and the Apple One cut wasn't getting deducted from the paycheck anymore. And
that is such a joke.
By the way, speaking of which, you guys know about the Apple One double dip, right?
Yeah, if the company hires you, like they have
that's one. That's the triple dip.
Triple dip.
That's a triple
the double dip is that, let's say, given company hires a temp from Apple One, and Apple One is taking whatever 25% out of your paycheck. Whatever your total paycheck is, that company is also paying Apple One that directly.
No, I know that. Yeah.
If you make $20 an hour, that company's paying $40 an hour.
Yeah.
And then Apple One is taking their 20 plus a percentage of your 20.
Yeah.
That's the double dip.
But I thought that was illegal now. Like, I don't know. I'm not going to get into
it was probably illegal then.
And that's like, that's one of the other fascinating things about adulting, is just seeing how tall the shell game really reaches. It's like,
so how long did you go at this office job before
11 months.
11 months. Yeah. Okay. I just shy of a year, like, which again was one of those other like psychological litmus tests for me. Cause like, I had said like, I'm going to give it a year. And then that became like a thing in my head and imagination. Like, could I make it a year? The answer ended up being yes, easily. The time went really fast, kind of eerily quickly. And I also had asked myself whether or not I could warm up to the actual work. Like, could I like warm up to the actual, like just what you're literally doing every day? And the answer was no. Like I couldn't do it. And I didn't think that would matter, like having come from PAing. Like I just didn't think it, like, because PAing, it's like I'm picking up dog food and then driving stuff to a parking lot and then dropping it off. Like, what work could possibly be less interesting than this that would still be too uninteresting? Couldn't imagine anything. And proves out just sitting at a desk for me was that thing. Like, and for 11 months, like, instead of being like, oh, you're deeply uncomfortable and you're coming home with anxiety every day that you can't quite put a name on, I was like, this should be easy. I should be grateful. So I shall endure. And I wish I hadn't, honestly. Like, 11.
Even now, you look back and you're like, that was just something you should not have done. That was
enough. That 11 months honestly could have been 1 month and taught me the same set of lessons. It took me 11. Okay. I'm glad
it took me 3 years. So,
it took me 7, except again, I wrote an entire novel while I was there at my desk, and they let me on.
So, like, if you
let me audition. Yeah. And they let me audition, and like, I had
a whole different bag. Like, I stopped being creative. And the other, I literally just like, I would come home and just be like, the idea of turning on the computer and writing something, like, how ridiculous. You've been looking at
oh my gosh, not me. I would come home and be planning a night shoot, and then I would go guerrilla night shoot, and then go to bed at 4 a.m.
We have
get up at 7:30.
The same person in a swift instant here.
Yeah. And then I would get up and go to work. I'd be at work at 8. I'd get up at 7:30 and go to work at 8, and my voice would be down here, and they'd be like, Jaime, what's happening? I was like, well, I was up until like 3 on a shoot. Or I'd be performing at Second City, or, like, there was just, I was so tired, and I had so much anxiousness in a different way, because these people saw me and it wasn't happening to the point where I could like, financially support myself as an artist. So I just kept showing up at the same office, doing the same job, getting small promotions, and going, this is the rest of my life. And I decided like I could not live like that. Like either I've got to go all in full time or like decide to go all in full time at the office job, just like you. Like I'm going to have to, go up for a director position and like actually make this the thing.
Yeah.
Otherwise, what's the point? What am I going to do? Be middle management and a non-paid actor the rest of my life? Like, it is a big thing. It's like people might not get it, but it's a huge thing. Like you get to this, it took me 7 years, it took you 11 months, it took you 3 years, but like you do get to that crossroads.
And this is where we're all lucky / unlucky in different ways, right? Like you had people who are allowing you to create while you were there. You had people who were quietly incentivizing and encouraging you to continue in creative pursuits.
Yes.
And like that allowed you to A, keep being an artist, and B,
but it was a crutch too.
Absolutely. It's never going to be perfect.
It's never perfect.
But like, my role models, like at this particular firm for 11 years, were all months. That's Kathy pulled, but they were all like men who had like so firmly and decidedly lost their joy. Like,
yes.
Like there was like, I didn't run across anybody who had climbed that ladder and was like, this is awesome. And now I'm finally doing all the filmmaking and artistic stuff that I always wanted to do. And that was not the guy I was meeting. I was meeting the guy who was bitter and resentful. And I'm like, I gave my life to this company and now I'm on divorce number 2. And what do I have to show for it? And I'm like, oh crap, I got to get out now. Like it was so obvious that like unhappiness was a potential destination. Like
I literally worked in the divorce industry.
Oh my
he did.
And
the minute you got divorced is the day you quit there.
Not the day I quit, but that's when I put the wheels in motion. And it took me almost a year to fully extricate myself. But once I was getting divorced, I'm like, no, this is ruining my life. I am so glad that once you finally got out of that you were able to find yourself another day job, because you didn't need a day job, but one where you could be creative. I think that I imagine I've maybe even read some of the copy that you wrote in your next job, because Joshua's next position was writing copy for Playboy home video DVD cases.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was a weird one.
How'd that come about?
That actually grew out of the shitty office job.
What?
From the shitty office job?
Yeah. Well, it was a PR firm. And
of course.
It was a public relation firm. Playboy Home Video was their biggest client. And
okay. You got poached.
I got poached. When I left the office managing job and went back now to photo producing. Like, screw this, I'm gonna go photo produce. I'm gonna photo produce full time. On my way out the door, a different division of the PR firm tapped me on the shoulder and was like, hey, you know how to write? Why don't you just like write copy for the back of Playboy home video boxes? It pays really well and you can do it from anywhere. Like you don't have to keep showing up here.
That's great.
I thought so. But like that was another one that didn't last. That one lasted probably 6 or 7 months. And honestly, it wasn't because of the amount of time that I spent writing. It was because of the amount of time that I spent not writing and agonizing over a way to say, like, these girls are wet, wild, and whatever, a different way. Like, how do I say that the 400 different way of this week, I don't, and it was.
I had a job like this too.
It was like a riddle that paralyzed me for entire days.
Did you have to watch each video to know what you were writing about?
Well, as a good employee, I should have.
Sure.
Yes, and I really should have. And at the beginning, as a good employee, I promise you I did. But after a while, you do get wise to the fact that the content doesn't vary a lot. From video cassette to video cassette or DVD to DVD, and it's not really necessary. The title does really tell you most of what you need to know to write a paragraph. But for a very, very brief period of time, my bookshelves were filled with Playboy home video DVD
So
content, which
funny.
does not send a very good message to anybody who's coming over.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's for work.
It's for
Oh
work.
yeah, no, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I work on the jacket. Wait, that's not what I meant.
I was writing paragraphs, like 4 or 5 sentences for radio. You know, I have to read all the trashy periodicals every day online. And like, you know, they have a list of, like, my name would be like, Jaime, you're doing country cover, you know, Carrie Underwood. And I would do it and I would turn it in and she'd be like, this writing is too good. I'm going to need you to stop writing well. And she'd kick it back to me. She was so nice, but she'd kick it back to me. And the job ended up being 12 hours to 16 hours. I was only getting paid for an 8-hour day. And I was too exhausted to then work on the books. I was like, I can't do this anymore. But it's those jobs, like, people don't, like, people are always telling me, like, you should do copywriting. I do copywriting or listicles and you can get $100. And so I've done that. I don't care for that. That is not writing. That is a whole other skill set that I don't possess and don't
Agreed. And the
want to
people
learn.
that are good at it, like, God bless them. Because
God bless them. Oh my God.
It is a talent, and it is a talent to maintain your
100%.
foot on the accelerator for, like, you know, like, okay,
Yes.
8 hours. I will just be writing for 8 hours. Like,
Yeah.
that is, I don't have that.
No, I am the same. And, you know, I did it for a while and I talked about it while I was in MFA school, you know, because everyone's always like, well, what do you do for a living? And I was like, I don't want to say, because I'm terrible at it. But it is a skill set. And I am so grateful for the people that can be content and copywriters, content writers and copywriters. Like, that is a huge thing. You can make a lot of money. You can pay all your bills and be comfortable.
Oh, yeah.
And work on other things, except if you're like me, who takes 16 hours and gets paid pennies, basically. Like, that was, you know, when I factored it in, I think I was making $2.21 a day, an hour.
Okay, we're back to the same person. Okay, great. Same, you know, the same. Like, it is a universe that rewards and prizes only speed. That's it. I am really glad. I really am. This sounds really snarky, but, like, I'm glad we're not all ideally suited for the exact same terrible jobs. Like,
100%.
I'm glad that there's some of that, you know, like, oh my God, my skill set led me to my crappy jobs and I was uniquely good at them.
Yeah. And when people say, hey, I've got some copywriting jobs and I need some writers, are you interested? I'm like, no, but here's a list of 5 people I know would be great at this. Please call them, you know, like, boom.
Joshua.
Yes.
When you were doing this, when you were writing these DVD jackets, first of all, was this freelance? Did you do this at home or did you have to go into an office?
It was both, but it was mostly at home. It was mostly freelance. It was mostly remote.
Somebody shows up with a box of discs and drops them at your front door, hopefully
Literally
discreetly
exactly
labeled.
Not at all, but yes.
Okay.
And basically says we need however many and of whatever length they need for each title. So sometimes it would be, you know, a title would need 3 different blurbs. Like, we need a 2-sentence, we need a 4-sentence, we need an 8-sentence. And we want them all to sound different. And that was the part that would fry my brain. Because I'm like, they're gonna all sound the same.
But when they say different, they don't actually mean different. They just mean, you know, get a thesaurus, reformulate.
They mean don't use the same fucking words. That's exactly what they mean.
And you overthink it. And you freaking think
it's actually
it.
harder than you think, even with the thesaurus at your command. It was, if you're a perfectionist and deeply anal retentive, this is a wormhole nightmare. Grenade for the brain. Like, because, like, you know, what I've noticed, like, when I'm creative writing, like, I remember what I write. I have a really high retention for what I write. Like, I can remember a page that I wrote yesterday, and this stuff would disappear from my brain the second I typed it. Like, I could not retain it. So much so that, like, I would turn in stuff thinking that it was brand new, and I would get called out being like, you plagiarized one you wrote 3 weeks ago. It's like word for word the same. I'd be like, it is? Like, that seems impossible. I didn't even look at it. And I'd pull it up and be like, sure enough, I labored for 12 straight hours thinking I was typing an entirely unique Playboy description and managed to arrive at the exact same description that I wrote 3 weeks ago, not knowing it. This is not good for my brain.
It reminds me a lot of like the AI writer things.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
Yeah.
and I imagine those are probably all they need now.
I
not.
sadly so. I mean, like,
I would say of all of the things that it would be okay for AI to replace, writing the DVD jackets for Playboy home videos
softcore porn can lose their copywriters.
I don't, because I've got like seniors in college that I'm teaching that would love that job when they got out here.
Teach them how to write AI.
Okay, but here's the other thing. People think that AI is like all of a sudden stealing stuff, but as writers, we know that for years now, over a decade, they've had these generators for like titles. Like title generators, that's AI. They have, all this has existed for a lengthy period of time. So people screaming at people for doing the like.
I don't have any
like, listen.
That bile. I just will say the ease with which the written content can be generated is spooky. It's hard not to find spooky. The fact that like there's like places you can go and like, hey, I want to write a blog, dear AI. I did some stuff today. Now write the article for me. And that can happen, that we live in that place where that is spooky. I don't think that it is going to replace writers. I think that's like an absurd, and I think that kind of reactionary thinking, like every time there's a technological leap forward, it's like, oh my God, there's still cameras? That's going to ruin painting. There's no more painting anymore. And just on and on and on and on. But it does make writers compete for bandwidth and space in an environment that I don't think is necessarily fair. Do I think that there's already a lot of words out there? Do I think that having computers on auto drive pumping the internet full of additional words is the best thing for a literate public? No, I would personally prefer all of those words to be written by people, because for me it just has a higher psychological value to me. But that's, I don't think writing's going to go anywhere.
Well, let's talk about that for a second. So you are terrible at writing copy content for Playboy.
I'm glad that we got that established.
How did we get out of there and into the writing that you are brilliant at and teaching?
Persistence, honestly.
That's great.
Yeah.
I mean, this whole time I like to think I came out of film school with like a couple of really bad lenses on the business that I had to unlearn, and that took me a really long time to unlearn. And the biggest one was that the key to the business, and that the key to the success as a writer, director, or anything, was representation. And I had just sort of like wholly gotten into this idea that like the whole game was getting somebody to give a shit about my career more than I give a shit about my own career. Like, now it's your job to like, and so
it's a hard lesson to learn.
Oh, and it took so long, Jaime, to learn. But what it meant is that for the longest time in my head, I got out of film school with a directing degree, and what it meant is that I had earned the opportunity to direct. It was just a question of somebody recognizing that. And what I didn't realize is that I wasn't particularly good yet and had to get a lot better. And so it was over the course of, all of these running jobs and 11 months that like I just wrote probably 25 screenplays. And every single one of them was like the most important screenplay of my life and was sure to be the ticket out of that world. But what they ultimately really was practice. They were just, They were me sucking in a space that was safe without a lot of eyes on my suckiness. And I got better and I got better and I got better and I got better. And, you know, what I started to learn over getting better was that my perception that like, oh, an agent or manager is going to give a bigger crap about my career than I will was so wrong. And what it started to for me to mean was that like I was willing to work on creative projects and in collaboration with other people, but for free. You know, like it's like, oh, I'm working in these other spaces, so I'm not gonna get hired as a writer. That's becoming very clear. Like that's not happening. What I can offer myself, or what I can offer the marketplace then, is the skills that I'm acquiring for free. And so that's how I started going out, is I just started being like, oh, you have a really great story idea. I'd write it. And they're like, what do you want? It's like, nothing. Like, I want nothing.
Right.
And
I want to cut my teeth.
I want to cut my teeth. I want to work for you for nothing.
And that still sometimes happens today with, you know,
Absolutely.
the prospect of finances of it. Like Jason and I are working on something right now for someone, and it's like, it's huge. That still happens.
Most of the time, the reality is, and this is the hardest thing in the universe to explain to students, but like in the wilds, like most careers get started from somebody saying yes to a free opportunity. That was my first opportunity, was somebody being like, hey, we want to write, like, will you write this like really low budget, like horror film, with like no money and we need it in 2 weeks. And me being like, sure.
Yeah.
What the hell? And, you know, it was having written the 15 features prior to that I was confident were brilliant, but that have never to date seen the light of day or had any readership at all, that ultimately—
we'll read them. We'll read them.
Please don't. That ultimately—
I'm still stuck on the DVD jackets.
I still have a file somewhere.
But where did teaching fall into this? When did you decide that teaching was going to be another part of your— and listen, you're teaching MFA students, so it's sort of like a privilege. Like when you get to that level where you can teach professionals and adults or college students, to me anyway, it's a privilege.
I agree.
It's not a day job. It's part of what you want to do. Yeah.
I agree. I was lucky, you know, in how I have no shame in saying that. Like a friend of a friend knew somebody who was starting a writing program, and they were going to offer one screenwriting class, and they were going to basically pay no money for it. Like literally was like—
that sounds right. That sounds like an adjunct position.
It was like you will pay us ultimately for the opportunity to come teach this class. And again, it was just like one of those unique moments in time where I was like, what the heck? You know, it's like, I've always wanted to kind of see— I've always been preternaturally shy, and I kind of at the time rationalized it being like, I don't want to teach, but I want to get better at public speaking, and this is how I'm going to do it. I'm going to flex this muscle in this form. But that program was UC Riverside School of Residency. At the time, it had 8 students and no screenwriting component, and I was literally just giving a lecture every 6 months on like screenwriting fundamentals. And then that program grew, and I continued to say yes to every opportunity to like grow with it, and discovered that like, unlike the temp jobs and the writing copy, the teaching was not necessarily as financially rewarding as I had ever hoped it would be, but like it was super rewarding in this other system of ways that like I wasn't really getting fed. Like in my writing and creative life wasn't like there was always that sense that like the small bit of envy for like the friends that I knew who like were doing something important with a capital I. It was self-growth, and but it just grew out of somebody being like, will you teach this one class? And now 15 years later, like I'm teaching at Cal Arts and Chapman and UC Riverside, and it's become a huge part of my life. But that was not the prediction or the plan. It's just—
yeah.
Well,
Sorry.
thank you, Joshua, for saying yes to us. and
Yes,
Being
this was
here
so
today.
fun. I said it at the program when I was like finishing up, and I never had the opportunity to have class with you, which is my only regret with the program. But I feel like I got a little bit of you today, and that makes me so happy. Thank you for being here, honestly.
Huge pleasure. Delighted and honored to be here, truly.
She showed on Monday, made love on Tuesday. On Wednesday she was down. We fought on Thursday, made up on Friday. But now I'm losing ground. You call me lazy, you think I'm crazy. So why'd you come around? She want my money, but I got no money. This ain't no savings and loan. You call me lazy, you think I'm crazy, so why'd you come